Hey there, we're Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. With our deep expertise in political strategy and a passion for the politically conservative and faith-based market, we're here to guide you into tapping into this $5 trillion opportunity. Having worked on high-profile campaigns like Donald Trump's 2016 run, we're excited to share our data-driven insights and the 5 Ps process to help you authentically connect with this loyal and lucrative audience.
Join us as we explore real-world examples, reveal game-changing strategies, and provide you with the tools to accelerate your business growth in this powerful market. If you're ready to unlock the potential of the Liberty Spender audience, hit that subscribe button and let's embark on this journey together.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's raised over $500 million and elected over 100 members of Congress, 14 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we're helping your business get elected. Just think, what if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into an engaged and loyal audience we call Liberty Spenders? Now, Liberty Spenders are politically conservative or faith-based consumers who make up roughly 40% of the country and are looking to buy from businesses that align with their values. And today, we're really excited because today we're going to dive into the data and help you understand that Liberty Spender audience even more.
Yes, today you're all in for a treat as we talk with a great expert in this space, Amanda Iovino of WPA Intel. We've known Amanda for a few years now, but we've worked with WPA probably for 2 decades and their principal, Chris Wilson. But Amanda is also someone who has accomplished many things in her career. She has worked with federal and state campaigns. We worked with her probably closely on the Glenn Youngkin campaign for governor of Virginia, where she won an award from the American Association of Political Consultants as pollster of the year. That was a big, yes.
Well done. That
deserves
a clap.
But WPA Intel is a polling and data and analytics company. On their homepage, they have the best statement: "In God we trust, all others should bring data," which I think explains the mentality there at WPA. And it's also super fun. Amanda's originally from Long Island. She graduated from Vanderbilt, received her master's degree in applied economics in Johns Hopkins, which means she did a lot more college than I did. But we're happy to have her on.
Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're excited to be chatting with you. And I just wanted to start, because we've been loving doing this with each one of our guests, but what made you get into polling and data analysis? Because I know from your resume that isn't exactly how you got into this business initially.
Yeah, I started out mostly doing opposition research, which is the really fun stuff of digging up dirt. But I've been involved in campaigns since I was in 2nd grade when my dad ran for school board.
Huh.
So I've really run the gamut with campaigns of all levels. But I've always been a little too mathy for some of the other areas of campaigns that I've worked on. So polling and analytics just kind of fit what I'm interested in and kind of my background.
I like that explanation, mathy. That sounds like what I would say to describe it. So, I feel better that you're using that too.
We're inventing new words here on the Liberty Spenders podcast.
I always say most of my job is translating the really smart things my data science team does into normal English. And if I can wrap my head around it, I can usually explain it to some other people. But our team is incredibly smart, and I'm lucky to be here at WPA.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you. And I remember those early days of the Glenn Youngkin for governor campaign in Virginia, which was such a big race. And that was a race nobody thought anyone could win. And it's so important to understand data when you're trying to win an unwinnable race or one that seems tough, because you have to find people who might be inclined to vote for your candidate that other folks wouldn't stereotypically think of. It's easy when you're running a blue candidate in a super blue state or a red candidate in a super red state. But when you're in a 50-50 place, you got to go dig and find your people. What was kind of the biggest thing you think you learned from doing that campaign?
I think finding those niche audiences and then balancing how we talk to each of the groups. Some of it was really marrying the polling and the data together, because I don't think any one piece of information on a campaign tells the full story. We had to look at the data, we had to look at what the polling said, we had to look at the responses we were getting back on digital and the responses to our TV ads. We really had to synthesize the entirety of the data. But at one point, I think a lot of folks think we won that election on education, and CRT specifically is talked about, especially up in the national media. But we had 9 different education models running at any given point during the campaign, 9 different niche audiences talking about the issue of education, just in a slightly tailored way to each group, and really being able to tailor that message. And then Terry McAuliffe had his classic blunder, and by blunder, I mean speaking his truth during a debate, which tied all of those 9 strings up in a nice, neat bow. We were able to finish out the campaign, but really talking to each voter how they wanted to be talked to really helped kind of tie in the whole campaign.
Yeah, and for our listeners, when she's describing 9 models just on that one issue, that's just a lot to synthesize. And so I imagine you were overseeing a number of people working on this. So goes to show your credentials and management on it, because that is a lot. And of course, probably not the only thing you were working on. That just adds to it as well.
You can never work on one thing a day in a campaign. You're probably not doing enough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got to jump around. But that made it an easy choice when Kristen and I really started digging into helping businesses market to conservative and faith-driven buyers that the folks we call Liberty spenders. One of the first things I did was call WPA and say, look, can you help me put together an audience of folks that fit this description that we feel like we could specifically market to? Let's put some definition on it. And like a lot of times when I call WPA, it's like, we've already thought of that, which I think is a good thing. You guys already have an audience of conservative buyers, which really match what we're talking about with Liberty spenders. And so we've talked about this a lot since then. But for folks who maybe are thinking or talking about Liberty spenders for the first time, talk a little bit about the profile of people and what how you would describe them.
Exactly. What is a Liberty spender, Amanda?
So when we built the model, and when we build models, we basically do a very, very large survey. And we look at the responses, and we do a very long analysis of who responds which way, tied to all of their consumer data, and what about them makes them likely to choose option A versus option B versus option C in the survey. We do tens of thousands of responses, kind of boil down into this model, and then we give every single person a score of 0 to 1. And 0 is they are never going to agree to this, and 1 is that they are always going to agree with this. So no one's ever a 0 or a 1. It's never completely black or white. But we found that top tier of folks who were likely to respond that yes, they are more likely to purchase products that have explicitly conservative branding, that they want to buy something that kind of aligns with their more conservative values. Now, conservative values mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, so there's a lot of, I think, nuance in this data. But that is, at its core, we're looking at people who are very likely to buy something that is speaking to their conservative values.
And what do you think, what would you say distinguishes them? I think, of course, the fact that they're more likely to buy something based on their conservative values, but any other sort of distinguishing factors that make them unique?
I think it's that they're not distinctly any one thing. We can't quite talk about them the same way that we talk about, just Republican voters or just Democratic voters on the other side. What distinguishes these voters and consumers from other consumer groups is that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. And I think a lot of the times we consider that really a value on the left, where especially environmentalists are going to be buying more environmentally conscious products. No one's ever really looked at it from the right side of the ideological spectrum before. And these are individuals, so their reasons for doing it are extraordinarily varied. And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of the demographics of who makes these folks up later. But at its core, these are folks that want to share their values with the brands that they are purchasing.
Yeah. And when you say they'll put their money where their mouth is, I think the implication is they might even be willing to pay a little more for a product that matches their values, or maybe even a lot more for some of these folks, knowing that this company shares their values.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on what the product is and what the marketplace looks like, but they are definitely wanting to engage with brands the way that they engage in either the political space or even in their social space.
Yeah, and when I took a dive into it, one of the things that occurred to me, and I want to see if you would agree with this, is that, you might think, looking at it originally, that this is a very monolithic audience. They're all voting for Trump, or they're all voting for, one candidate over another. But we actually have although there's some commonality there's a lot of diversity in, where these people can stand on, say, a political party or candidates they're supporting. And so it's more diverse, I suppose, than folks might assume.
Yeah. Only 43% of these folks are actually registered as Republicans. And I think that, we even have about 200,000 of, admittedly, the over 30 million who are modeled as specifically conservative buyers, when even more when you add in the faith spender group, who are Democrats. So there are Democrats, there are independents, there are libertarians folded into this mix. And yeah, only about 13,500 of them or 13.5 million of them, are actively registered as Republicans. So they really come from all over.
Yeah, so there's some RFK Jr. people in there. I get asked about him probably more than anyone these days. And of course, that's probably has a lot to do with the fact that everybody's opinions on Trump and Biden are pretty set. And RFK Jr. is a new thing, but I get asked about it a lot. I imagine there's a lot of folks in there that are, still undecided, if you will, about who they're going to vote for.
But they would at least consider voting for someone else. I think we're seeing a lot of, we really have to choose between these two again, kind of sentiment.
Yeah.
So folks are looking for an alternative.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting, you were talking about this, but this model that you had created, because we talk about how Liberty spenders broadly, right, make up a large group of the population. But this model that you guys were able to do really got down to the highly engaged, highly motivated audience. And like you said, you had that at 32 million. And again, not factoring in people with the faith element. So I just wanted to clarify that for people, because that's really what we're talking about, is the super, super engaged and motivated group, that at least of your model that you did.
Yeah. Now, I know you mentioned demographics.
I'd say
go ahead.
I'd say our model really focuses on those who want their conservative values, and we didn't talk to them, we didn't survey them about their religious views, but which really shows you that there's a huge overlap between these folks. But there are some who are only going to be kind of purchasing on their faith values and how those connect, and there are some who just want more conservative values. And there's, like I said, a lot of overlap, but those are also very distinct messages, and you can.
Yeah. When we did our research, we found even an independent poll done years ago of faith-driven consumers, and they found 41 million adults. And again, to your point, there's probably some commonalities between this conservative model and that faith-driven model, but they found 41 million adults who'd be willing to buy your product, or 80% more likely to buy it, if they know or understand your religious values and hear some religious messaging. So there's, the audience is certainly a big one. And I think that might what I want to help people understand is from a demographic standpoint, you referenced this earlier, it's also a pretty diverse group of folks. And they're not just, some people, when they think of, say, who's politically conservative, they might think of big, giant Trump fans, that they're only rural and white, but I think this is a much broader audience, people who are wealthy, people who are not, men, women, all sorts of ethnic diversity, all sorts of geographic distribution around the country. I know when we looked at the list, there's more of them in California than anywhere else. And
that's not what you would think going
right.
into this, even though it's obviously there's a lot of people that live there. But that wouldn't have been, that to the person who's uninitiated, they may not think of that first.
Yeah. Looking at just in Indiana, where you all are, about every 1 in 5 of our liberty spenders are ready for a new face of the Republican Party. Don't necessarily want Trump to lead the Republican Party, to your first point. So there is a decent amount of those that are in here that are ready, they're not super Trumpy,
right?
Let's say. But in California, we've got over 2 million conservative spenders, and to your point about the faith overlap, we don't necessarily consider California to be a very religiously minded state, and only 18% of those 2.3 million California liberty spenders are evangelical.
Right.
So there is that kind of Venn diagram of who is a liberty spender for their conservative values versus more of their faith-driven values. There is overlap, but it's not necessarily a complete circle.
Yeah,
and that's helpful because that's not maybe what you would assume coming into it, and so that's why we love our data, right? We love getting into the getting into the facts.
Well, helping people understand just how diverse and varied this audience is helps them imagine. This audience, we estimate, spends $5 trillion a year on various products. And they're buying cars, they're buying pets, they're buying food, they're buying homes. Everything that you sell, if you're a business, there's a percentage of our Liberty Spender audience who are your target customers. So helping people appreciate it doesn't matter where you're located, doesn't matter what you sell, what your income target is, whether you're B2C or B2B, there is a section of this Liberty Spender audience that is in your sweet spot.
Yeah. We have, over a quarter of these folks have household incomes of over $100,000 a year. And if you just drop that down to 75, it's over 40% of our audience has income over $75,000 a year. So there's definitely a decent amount of room. 35% of them are parents, right? So if you're talking even about kids products, there are a good chunk of these folks who have kids, and that's not even including grandparents who want to spoil their grandkids, or aunts and uncles who want to do the same. So I think there's a market for almost any product within these folks.
And I know this isn't your your all's focus at WPA, but one of the things that we think is so exciting about this is because we know, we have this model, we know how to talk to a lot of these people. And because we know that they have already raised their hand and said, hey, I'm looking for this in the marketplace, I want to buy this, there is demand. And it's just a matter of being open and learning how to message to these people and helping to attract them to you. And of course, we've seen that based on that, you get a more loyal buyer. You get people that are going to re-engage. They're going to give you referrals. So you think about what's the ROI in reaching these people, and because they're going to be so passionate, because of that values alignment, you're going to just see tremendous growth in the overall sale. And that's really what is most exciting to me, is you're not just getting another consumer, another customer, another client. You're getting someone who is there because of who you are, and they feel drawn to you and they feel that loyalty to your brand. which is just going to increase the likelihood that you'll get more because they're going to tell their friends and family about you.
Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking of as you were, that loyalty factor, as I said, a lot of them are Republicans, but a lot of these folks are people that Republican campaigns are talking to on the political side. And if there's one thing that we have learned from our political work is how to capture people's attention. And I think in this environment where we're at now, where, I could be looking at 3 screens at the same time. I've got, a TV show on in the background. I have someone blowing up my phone and then trying to do some work on my computer all at the same time. How do you show me an ad that's going to capture my attention? And if you have these folks who are already saying, I'm going to be on the lookout for conservative branding, you have that much more of an advantage in being able to know how to capture their attention, to know how to market them, bring them into your sales funnel before, and then, as you said, kind of treating them as a customer and keeping their loyalty, which they're going to be more likely to do.
Oh yeah. And it's not even, there's the messaging, there's the, having a good sense of who these people are, which is why this data is so valuable. And we're going to get into that next. But then you're already skipping ahead to that amazing conservative ecosystem that we talk about as part of our 5P system, which is helping you with the product rollout plan. So if you're, looking into engaging with this audience, that's part of what we're helping our clients do is understand who these people are, understand how they want to message to them, how they want to reach them, and then helping you understand there's a whole way of getting your message out to these people. Instead of thinking, oh my God, I've got to run an ad like a normal, how do I find them? How do I target? And so you're exactly right, because there's so many ways to do it. In fact, that's probably a great segue for you, Kurt.
Sure. I mean, as we deal with businesses of all types, a lot of them are a little uninformed as to how to make good use of data analytics. This is something, of course, in politics we live and die by. Even the smallest campaigns understand simple concepts of finding who your target audience is, knowing who you're going to very specifically drop a mail piece to, as opposed to, for example, doing a broad demo target, but knowing who our turnout audience is. But a lot of businesses don't really know how to use data. And of course, they don't come with some of the inherent known pieces of information, like who's a registered Republican, that we do in politics. So if a business wanted to engage and use data analytics, use modeling, work with a firm like yours, what does it look like? What are the benefits of it? What can they do? What's involved in it? Just give us a bit of the lowdown of how all that works.
Yeah, I think the benefits to analytics are the same in the consumer space as they are in the political space, which is efficiency, right? The important thing about analytics, as you kind of alluded to, is knowing who to talk to, but really knowing who not to talk to. That kind of keeps your costs a little bit lower, and then you can get a higher frequency, a higher number of impressions on those folks that are more likely to come your way, with the same ad budget. So for that kind of restriction of who your target consumer is, and some of it is going to be, who does the brand want as their target consumer? And we can kind of help them create a mold that way of who they think that their target consumer is. We can pull from data to support that. But the other thing the data can do is show where there's a huge gap in marketing, where they can be pulling in more consumers. And I think that's really what the Liberty Spender piece is about, for brands that kind of have that conservative set of values as part of their brand values. This is a segment of the market that, they might be thinking of, hey, this is my consumer over here, but your values actually align with this whole segment, and you're only touching a small piece of those if you're just considering this your ideal consumer. So we can help open up some new markets just by, looking at the brand, not just who you say you want to talk to, but who you could potentially talk to with your products and your branding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we've done with you for clients of ours is, let's take a look at a client's customer base. Let's find out within that customer base, who do they already have who's a Liberty spender? Maybe they'd be shocked to find out they have a ton of them already. And so, which might confirm that as a good strategy. But on the opposite side, maybe they realize they're really under marketing to this audience. And so we've been doing these kind of deep dives, and it can be very illuminating to a business. It also creates some low-hanging fruit, folks that maybe they've marketed to but haven't gotten out of them, or they haven't re-upped. And with a little bit of a nudge with some conservative messaging, they can turn them into more loyal customers.
So we can match really when we have name, zip code, phone numbers, any kind of bit of consumer data that someone has. Our very smart and very talented data science team can do what we call a fuzzy match, where it might not be exact, this is 100% this person. So you do get a little bit of data loss because everyone has a voter ID number. It's kind of like your social security number, but it's just not quite as private. And that's typically what we match on. But when we have consumer data, and especially when it's coming from business, we can do this rough matching and we go, okay, there's only one Kurt that lives in his zip code. And we can match him, and then we know all of this information about him, and we know whether he's a Liberty spender or not. So then we can look at the profile of who these customers are, which is a pretty close approximation to what it actually is, because you get the same amount of loss in a lot of the same areas. And then we can show how that stacks up to the Liberty spenders. And if we have at WPA, we've built hundreds of these models. I think the Liberty spenders, the conservative buyers, that's the one that's most applicable here. But we even have ones that are used in the political space that can be appropriated for our consumer-based clients, which are like those who are feeling really hard hit by inflation and really blame the current political administration for that. So that kind of tells you, I think, what we were talking about earlier. Maybe when inflation goes down, they're going to be willing to spend a little bit more for these conservative brandings. But if they're really feeling the pinch of inflation, then this might just be a time for those higher price brands to kind of pull back on marketing to them. And that even further trims your audience, and you can get an even higher ROI for those more kind of wealthy consumers that are already trying to engage with conservative brands.
Yeah, and if I could just say that another way, this is why we've enjoyed working with you guys so much on this project, because not only do you have this background, we speak the same language in terms of political campaigns, but also you do have this large book of business, like you said, that's on the corporate and consumer side. And so what's amazing, and what I hope anybody who just was listening picked up on that, was that the power of what we can now do for our clients is not only help, as Kurt said, find somebody and find out, oh my gosh, you already have a large group of these people already as your consumer base, so let's run up a score, or wow, this person falls into this bucket, so here's where you can go back to stalled offers, or here's where you can go back to these people and re-engage them as buyers with a new message that may attract them in a different way. But just knowing that we can use all this other information we know that is, like you said, politically focused, but use that to really help you hone in on the messaging. Because like you said, inflation is huge. Other concerns about economics can help you when you're thinking about, okay, what can I say that'll really resonate? And that is a massive benefit, is that we have access to all of that. And we can do these fuzzy matches, as you said, Amanda, I like that. Fuzzy matches to help you better understand your customers, and then how you can go get more of them.
I also always think that it's illuminating sometimes for employees to know who the consumers are, and being able to show your staff with very good accuracy, these are who's already buying our products. This is why we're going in this direction. Kind of gets the entire team on board and really kind of gets your internal team together and thinking in a similar way. And I think especially in this day and age, that's extraordinarily helpful.
Absolutely. And I think it's been good to have a little time just to dig deep into this Liberty Spender audience. And there's been a lot covered here. Really appreciate Amanda for joining. And to get in touch with Amanda, you can go to WPAintel.com and find her there, or shoot her an email. I'm sure she'd be happy to help and work with you. And I really appreciate, Amanda, you coming.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was wonderful.
Yes, and to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We want to invite you to join the Liberty Partnership community at libertyspenders.com. You can also find out a lot more information about this exact topic, about our 5P system, how we can help you understand this data and this audience with your own customer information. So please check us out at libertyspenders.com. You can also play around with our Liberty Access Multiplier AI tool, which will ask you some basic questions. It'll walk you through step by step and give you a nice report. And you also get to hear from AI version of Kurt and Kristen, which is a little scary. But anyway, you can check all of that out and more at libertyspenders.com. And until next time, thank you.